All right, I think we're live. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the next sticky note. These are basically designed as they're normally Friday afternoon, but this time obviously the Queen had something to say about that. So we basically catch up every other Friday afternoon just to share some things that we might know that other people might be interested in hearing about. So they can be about product design or strategy or research, lots of the kinds of work we do, or they might be on things like what I'm going to be talking about today, which is about how we can all work better together or easier or faster or whatever. So today I am going to be talking about destroying all meetings. So hopefully we should be able to see. Yeah, there's a few people on the stream. So basically this is for our team. So the folks at the user story, we like to share and teach each other about various different bits. And the reason we do these sticky notes is just in case anybody else fancies hearing about them as well, really. Come along, enjoy it. And we should only be about 15 minutes or so. If there's any questions, we're obviously live in various different places. So you can always leave a comment and we'll try and get back to you if you do have a specific question. If there's anything else that you want to ask, then ask it and we'll try and get back to you after the event. So let's get into it. So destroying all meetings. I have a bit of a bugbear basically with meetings. I don't like meetings at all. I think that meetings are basically the bane of pretty much everyone's existence, right? They are most of the time very boring. They are uninteresting to the majority of the people that are in them. It's really hard to make sure that you've got the right people in them. It's really hard to make sure that people are engaged and they're actually paying attention in meetings. I can't remember the last time that people have, people that I've been working with have created meetings just off the cuff and they've actually stuck to the right time, or they've had an agenda which everyone's stuck to and all that sort of stuff. They're really, really hard. They're notoriously just difficult to work with. And the problem is you've got this kind of knock-on effect with meetings where actually because of that, you find people, especially when they're working from home, might have really interesting opinions. They might have, input that they want to give into things that that you need to decide or that you need to generate, but actually they're just not that involved in those meetings because the meetings are constructed poorly, or they end up just sort of switching off halfway through. And what we're finding is because lots of people are going hybrid now, so since obviously the coronavirus pandemic over the last couple of years, we found most people are now starting to do some sort of hybrid work or working from home or whatever, and there's lots of remote companies now, so fully remote companies. We find that just compounds the problem. Actually, lots of people, when they're working from home, really don't engage with meetings. They're actually doing completely different things and quietly pretending that they're listening when actually they're working on something different. And, if you've got a meeting for 2 hours, I don't really blame people for just switching off and being bored and going off and doing something else. But we're not calling meetings for no reason. People still need to make decisions. They need to impart information. They need to collaborate together. So meetings are kind of, seen as a bit of a necessary evil, which is why we still have them. And those things are still really important. Businesses work on people coming together and making decisions together and pushing things together. So we do still need to have a way that we can actually do those things collaboratively and together. But sort of basic meetings where we're just calling a meeting and then hoping that things work out don't seem to be the way to do it. So I think there's two main ways that you can try to destroy all meetings. And the first one is deciding whether you even need to have the meeting in the first place. Most of the time, we will call a meeting because it's the easy thing to do. It's the universal recognized symbol of we're all coming together to do a thing. And that's kind of fine in some instances, but actually the vast majority of the time, if you see a meeting and then you've gone through it over that hour and you've basically said nothing, I can imagine that most of you have said, didn't really need to have that meeting. That could have been an email, I think is something that everybody has said across their professional career. And so the first question you need to ask is, do we even need to have this meeting? And the easier way to work this out is actually to think about communication as a wider thing, and thinking about breaking it down into two ways that you can actually impart that communication. So the first one is asynchronous, and the second one is synchronous. So what do we mean by those two things? Well, basically, asynchronous communication is not what we're doing now. Asynchronous communication is messages, emails, it could be Slack messages, it could be recorded audio, recorded video. So YouTube video is a really nice method of asynchronous communication. In businesses, it could be things like Loom videos or tutorial videos, that kind of thing. And then synchronous communication methods are when everyone is actually together at the same point in the same time, and that is obviously meetings. It's video calls. It could be things like this, like live streams, and it could be when you're actually in a physical location together, so down the pub or whatever. So when we think about those two different communication methods, there are reasons why you would choose some over the other. So with asynchronous communication, for example, you might choose to use an asynchronous communication method if you're just imparting information. So if there's something you need to tell other people, but you don't need to actually have those people in the room with you at the same time, asynchronous is best. And we find that lots of people expect things like Slack to be synchronous, but really it's not. It's an asynchronous communication method. And in fact, Slack now has the ability for you to record a little bit of audio or record a tiny video and actually just put them onto Slack for people to watch in their own time. And we've started to use this really effectively for people who are working remotely on their own time. And when we think about people working from home, people working flexibly from home, actually the from home bit isn't the interesting part. The interesting part is in my own time. I actually get to work how I like to work. And that is actually sometimes I like to get up at stupid o'clock in the morning and work from 7 o'clock so that I can finish up early. Whereas some other people in the team might be night owls. They might like to work into the evening. So actually trying to find synchronous communication time where we're all actually in the same place at the same time is really tricky. So if you're just imparting information, why force people to be there with you at the same time? Think about an asynchronous communication method. So it could be text and it could be a Slack message, but it could also be a recorded audio, recorded video. I think we also need to set the rules in our teams as well. So actually, if you are making some sort of asynchronous communication, you're not expecting people to be there and to answer things straight away. And if you're sending a Slack message, you're not just saying hi and then waiting for someone to be available for you at that time. Give them the whole message and let them come back to you when they're ready. And if you happen to be there at the same time, great, you can have a little chat. But otherwise, leave it for asynchronous methodology. And then synchronous is best when you actually need to make a decision together. There's some complicated information that you're worried that things might be misconstrued if perhaps they're given in an asynchronous method. And actually, this works really well for things like some of those more difficult conversations where you need to make sure that it's not just the message that comes across well, but it's also the way in which the message is given. Then think about a synchronous method of communication. And anything where you might have questions. So anything where someone's presenting something like this, it's nice and quick, or you're actually trying to achieve a goal together, synchronous is definitely best. So if you've decided through all of that, you definitely still need to have something synchronous, how do we make sure that those things aren't meetings that just go on for endless hours? Well, the way you do that is by turning every single meeting that you do into a workshop. There is no reason to have a meeting if you've got a nice, well-established workshop of activities that you can run through. And I'm going to tell you about, this is like a little hint really, to turn any meeting that you have into a workshop. And that is by using these 3 activities. If you can basically work these 3 activities, you can turn any meeting into a workshop. So the first thing is generating. And that is where you independently create items together, and then you have a bit of guided time to review and ask questions about those items. So let's say that you are thinking about some ideas for something new for your product. You might just have 10 minutes for everybody to quietly note down Post-it notes by themselves and stick them on a wall. Or if you're doing it remotely, give people access to a Miro board, set a 10-minute timer, and everyone generates their own individual ideas. That is a nice guided exercise. Everybody's doing the same thing. Everyone is on an equal communications platform. So even the more quiet people in a group are actually able to do that without feeling like they need to come out of their more, their quiet bubble in order to get their point across. So once you've got those ideas, you can then organize things. So you basically take items that are already on a board or, already up on a wall somewhere, and you organize them. And you can do that in lots of different ways. So you could decide to group things that look similar or have a similar theme, or you could even plot them onto a map or a journey. And then the third thing is forced ranking. So if you need to prioritize a bunch of ideas, you need to work out what's more important for you to achieve now or what you can actually deprioritize. Forced ranking is the way to do it. And that is where you take the items that you've already generated, you might have already organized them as well, and then you allow people to rank those independently too. So there's loads of different ways you can do this. You can buy yourself some sticky dots if you're doing this in person, and you can give people a few sticky dots and let them stick things onto post-it notes. You could also have you could give people 100 fake pounds and then ask them to add those 100 pounds to all the different ideas that you've got in front of you to see which ones are the ones that they think are, they would bet on most. So there's loads of different ways to do that. But if you can basically do those three things, you can generate and run pretty much any kind of workshop, and you can remove your meeting and do this instead. And it comes with loads of different benefits. But the main one is that it completely changes the method of communication so that everyone is collaborating together. It makes it really nice and easy for you to actually keep to time because you are actually timing those things. And everyone knows what you're going to get out of the meeting. So you don't even need much of an agenda because you can say, this is the thing we're going to do. We're going to generate some ideas. We're going to organize them. We're going to vote them. We're done. No matter what kind of workshop you do, you always want to make sure you do these four things as well. So always agree that you are going to take charge. You need always to have one person that's in charge of that meeting who agrees with everyone else. Everyone here is okay with me taking control today, right? I'm going to make sure that we're keeping to time, that we're keeping to task, and that, anything that comes up that we're not going to talk about today, we're not going to talk about. So make sure you get that agreement and that you're going to take charge. Always time everything and always make that time really public. So in an office, we've got a nice big timer. So you can turn the timer and it just ticks its way down. It's got a nice big red dial so everyone knows what how much you've got left. But always keep to time and make sure that if you are finished, you move on to the next thing. And if you've given yourself permission to do that by taking charge, it's much easier for you to say, okay, we're out of time, we're moving on. The third thing is always use a parking lot. So a parking lot is a place that you might, on a physical board, you might put a bit of space aside for a parking lot, or in a Miro board, you might actually have a physical place on the Miro board for it. And a parking lot is for anything that comes up within that session that is outside the scope of that session for you to come back to. And it's so that anybody that comes up with an idea that isn't something you're going to tackle right now, but is still quite important, still feels like they're being listened to, and that idea is not going to be lost. So you can jot that note down and you can put it in the parking lot. And anybody at any time could say, I think that's an item for the parking lot. You move it on. It's a really nice way to make sure you don't get those kind of massive tangents going off in a different direction inside a session. And then the fourth thing is have breaks between activities. It's really tough for everybody to stay focused for more than about, sometimes between 20 and 40 minutes, depending on what people are like. Some people need more breaks and they're not able to concentrate on things for as long. Some people can go for hours without too much trouble at all. But always try and make sure that you have little breaks between activities to just give people a little bit of breathing space and think about what the next thing is that they're going to be doing. And that is my quick whistle stop tour to how you may be able to reduce the number of meetings that you have to zero. So those two things are, do you even need to have a meeting at all? Think about asynchronous communication instead of synchronous. Make sure that everyone understands what that means, so that you're not expecting somebody to get back to you straight away if it's asynchronous. And then the second thing is turn all of those synchronous meetings into some kind of workshop. And using those three tools, you should be able to create a workshop for pretty much anything you need. There's loads of additional resources as well. So if there are things that you want to do that perhaps you're not quite sure how to do, like a forced ranking exercise, you want to try something slightly different, there are loads and loads of online resources for that. One of our favorites is something called Workshop Tactics. It's a series of cards that you can buy, physical cards, as well as a Miro deck. And it basically gives you loads of ideas for different kinds of workshop techniques that you can run. And a lot of them do fit into those three kind of main categories, but they're all different ways that you can do it. So it's definitely worth picking up something like that to just give you, a few more ideas and things to work on. So Awesome. I think we have got. Have we got any questions from the user story team? And has anybody on various different social networks and things got anything they want to add as well? I'm going to add you back into the screen just in case anyone's got any questions. Katie has one, so I'm going to let you take the floor, Katie.
Hey, so I know that we do this probably quite a lot. What would you kind of recommend for people who are in teams that are probably a bit more stuck in their meeting ways than we are lucky enough to be, on how they actually start to make progress towards this type of thing rather than being stuck in endless meetings?
That is a really cool, very good question. And I do hear this a lot from people that are like, we're really stuck because this always happens and we can't seem to fix it and so on. The first thing is be an advocate for it. So if you are really into this and you think this is something you can solve, just start doing it is the first thing. The second thing is that initial thing of asking for permission, I think is really, really important. So if you say, look, I think just to keep us on time, do you mind if I just, keep us to the schedule, or if I set up a timer and that sort of thing? Get agreement from everyone around the room, because they may not have ever experienced that before. But if somebody says, okay, I'm going to take control, I can be 90% sure they will be really happy with someone just going, I'm going to take control of this meeting. Because the likelihood is they're probably thinking the same that you are. They're probably thinking, oh God, it's another meeting. It's going to be another hour and a half. It's only scheduled in for half an hour. It's going to just blow over for, another hour. They are probably thinking the same way as you. So if you just take that little step of giving yourself permission, other people will start to see that actually that worked really well. We're out of this meeting 20 minutes early. This is great. And you might then start to have conversations with people about how they can do it in their meetings as well. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. It does take a little bit of courage, but actually asking and gaining that permission is kind of the first thing I would do. Any more questions from the user story crew? There's nothing online. That's cool. Okay, in that case, I'm going to leave you to it. Thank you very much for joining us. Our next one is on the 17th of June. So that is a couple of weeks from now on Friday, same time, 12:30. And Holly, our experienced designer, is going to be talking about deceptive patterns. I am really, really excited about this one. So dark patterns are something that obviously we should try and avoid in all of our product design, any sort of experience design. A dark pattern is something where you essentially create a deceptive practice. So you might trick a user into doing something that perhaps they didn't mean to do. There are definitely certain airlines that may fall into the trap of creating deceptive patterns, which aren't great. And I think Holly's going to go through some examples of things to try and avoid. So yeah, really looking forward to that. So that's going to be on the 17th of June. We'll be live again on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So hope to see you there. But otherwise, thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye.